I saw the documentary. I saw the 2 episodes leading up to trials, I think is what it was. And then I had a lot of thoughts. The first one that's coming to mind right now, because you're a big theme for us is coach maturity, right? There was a moment where in the documentary, I think it was the second episode, or maybe, no, it's the first one. It's the first episode for sure. 2021 Tokyo.
Yeah.
Twisties.
Yeah.
Simone starts to freak out, and they're showing like they do a great job of going like in the real time talking about what she was feeling or anything, right? And then there was a moment where Laurent is at his house, and they're talking, and they're cutting up excerpts and stuff, and Laurent says, he says something to the effect of, usually when things like that happen, it has nothing to do with gymnastics.
Yeah.
Did you catch that?
Yeah.
And I was like, coach maturity.
Yeah.
For him to realize, or to at least have an inkling of like, she's getting the twisties and she's suffering in this moment. It's a high pressure moment. He knows the world's eyes are looking at this girl. And I remember writing a kind of like a small little segment, like a small blurb about the 2021 Olympics, and I remember saying that I remember praising Laurent and Cecile because they allowed her to drop out, which before, like, Marta would have never, like, Marta would have never just like thought, like, Marta would have looked at her with this look like, what is happening, right? And I never knew the Carolis, nor was I around them or anything like that. So it's not like love lost on my end. But like I remember, I know for a fact that like that look would have been so deep, piercing, the Carrie Strug moment. Yeah. It would have been the Carrie Strug moment.
And it's so sad. It's so sad because at that point the kid knows, like, the many times that you feel like the fact that these kids did something on a fractured foot or on like any type of injury, overall, like
crazy,
like the pressure of doing it because of fear, not really because anything else, really. Like, it's like, if I don't do this, like, I have no option. Like, and I'm put on a spot where I'm literally up here on the podium and everybody's watching, and it's like do it for your country. You know what I mean? It's like, but I have a broken foot, you know?
That's wild. I remember watching that, and I remember like the praise that I had given him for 2021 for letting her opt out of the all around or qualification or whenever it was.
Yeah.
I remember praising him and Cecile so much, and then hearing him say, like, when those things happen, usually it has nothing to do with gymnastics. I'm like, the level of maturity that you have to have as a coach to understand that in that moment, what he probably wanted was an Olympic champion. Yeah. As a coach, as a professional, to add to his resume, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
And for him to say, like, for him to understand what's happening right now out there, you may think that it has to do with the sport, but it actually has nothing to do with the sport.
Yeah, and I think
her brain is fractured. I
think going back to it, I think now I have some more answers to your question from way when we started this earlier, was about beam. And I feel like that is what's me working on beam for such a long time, and only beam. I felt like beam itself is a mental game, and I think I've had to stop and do a lot of mental work to be able to get my athletes to do certain things on the beam and make them look good and stuff like that. But I feel like it's the mental side of it, and stopping and not only think about their physical capabilities, but also thinking about their mental, because this sport is, I feel like, more mental than physical at this point. You know what I mean? Like, if
especially when you get to 9 and 10.
Yeah, I have so many girls. Like, 50, I have so many girls mental. That are very capable, and I think this is a struggle that I've came on now being a head coach. And it's like I'm one of the people that I'm always open to suggestions, and I'm always asking people because I feel like I don't know it all, you know, and I want to learn from other people too and other people's experiences.
Right.
So it's like, I think one of the biggest struggles that I've had is how do I deal with all of the mental side of it? You know what I mean? Like, it's really tough. It really is really tough. But then it's also, like you say, having that maturity of accepting that it's not, okay, your kid is capable of doing it. She has the strength or the flexibility to do the skill. But if it's not up here, it ain't happening. So
I was really impressed when he said that.
Yeah.
It was really poignant. It was really powerful for me to hear that, because I think I probably would have arrived at an answer like that also if I had an athlete that like that. Like, I've had athletes with mental blocks before, and I have athletes right now that struggle with trying to get themselves mentally ready for competition and things like that. But that is a different degree of, that's exponentially larger. The Olympics, the world's the best gymnast that's ever lived. Yeah. His name attached to that, like for him to realize in that moment,
and for Simone, even worse, for just being the person that she is and being the athlete that she is and having so much behind her, like all the medal and like she is already amazing, and then having all that pressure of like you cannot fail because you're amazing all the time. And if you do, then you know it's sad. You know?
I was so impressed with him.
You start kind of like losing thought that they're human, you know what I mean, and you
start to idolize them. You start to like, again, I put out a thing today about romanticizing sports, but like you start to put these people in this like god hero status, and like they really shouldn't. They're just people. So
I think it's something that happened to like Suni when she went to college, you know, which was sad because you know, we all look up for that college experience.
Correct.
And so it's kind of like, man.
Yeah, I just want to double down on that. Like Laurent, I don't know if he would ever watch this, but like Laurent, it's so impressive and mature to be able to it's just an incredibly impressive thing to understand. Like, this has nothing to do with gymnastics. Whatever's happening inside her head right now, it has nothing to do with gymnastics. It has nothing to do with muscle memory. It has nothing to do with focus. It has nothing to do with like nothing. It has to do, something's going on in the brain, in the muscle, and it probably has absolutely nothing to do with gymnastics. So the segue that they had in the documentary, transitioning from that to Nasser, I think was like oh, here's that, like that leap that people, like, you never know what's going on in somebody's mind. So I thought it was incredibly impressive. I'm incredibly empathetic to Simone and incredibly impressed by Laurent. Should he ever be across from me, I think I'd have a lot of like technical questions about him in terms of like the sport and like the nooks and crannies of like how to coach certain things or like what, but you know what I mean? Like just some real nerdy gymnastics coach shit. But now I also have a lot of like psychology questions that I think he might have the answers to in terms of like how to deal with certain athletes and how to build a strong mind.
The experience he has obviously at such large, big competitions, you know.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. The other thing, let me go back to my note because I wrote a lot of this stuff down. The other thing that is a combination to the support of coaches